The survey vessel drifted through the outer edges of the yellow star system, its sensors scanning the third planet with minimal interest. Commander Zilth of the Concordat Survey Division checked the readings one more time and let out what passed for a sigh among his species. Another primitive world, he muttered. To his second officer, the planet below teemed with life, dominated by bipedal mammals who had barely managed to escape their own gravity. Well, their largest space station orbited their homeworld like a child's toy. Constructed from metal alloys and basic polymers, Zilth updated the database entry for the system they called Soul Chemical Propulsion. Confirmed nuclear fission. Confirmed faster than light. Capability: negative quantum computing. Negative plasma weapons. Negative recommendation: revisit in 1,000 standard cycles. His second officer nodded in agreement. They have established small settlements on their fourth planet and one of their moons, she reported. How quaint. Do they even have proper atmospheric shields? Negative. Commander, they use pressurized habitats. Very basic construction. Zilth marked the file as low priority. Galaxy was full of species like this, young, ambitious, and hopelessly behind the technological curve in another few millennia. Perhaps they would develop something worth noticing. Perhaps they would discover hyperspace mechanics or graviton manipulation. Until then, they were simply another entry in an endless database. The Concordat had been watching over the galaxy for 15,000 years, guiding species toward enlightenment when they reached certain developmental thresholds. These humans hadn't even unified their own planet, yet their nations still competed for resources, still maintained separate military forces, still squabbled over territory and ideology. Compile the report and transmit it to Concordat Central. Zilth ordered. Mark it as routine survey. No action required. The vessel turned away from Earth, its mission complete behind them. Humanity continued its slow crawl toward the stars, unaware they had just been catalogued and dismissed across the galaxy, far from the insignificant yellow star. Tensions had been building for decades. The Vex Dominion and the Korthax hegemony had been circling each other like predators, each waiting for the other to show weakness. The Vex were a hive species, billions of individuals connected through biological neural networks that spanned across dozens of worlds. They saw themselves as the pinnacle of organic evolution, perfectly synchronized and utterly efficient. Their ships were grown rather than built, organic constructs that could heal damage and adapt to threats. The Korthax hegemony took the opposite philosophy. They had long ago abandoned the weakness of flesh, uploading their consciousness into mechanical bodies that could be upgraded, repaired, and made nearly immortal. Their vessels gleamed with chrome and alloy, packed with weapon systems that could atomize planets. To the Korthax, organic life was an evolutionary dead end, a primitive stage to be transcended. The Concordat had tried to mediate between them for centuries, but some hatreds ran too deep when a Vex colony world was sterilized by what appeared to be a Korthax weapon. The fragile peace shattered. The Vex Queen Mother declared war within hours. The Korthax Prime Collective responded in kind fleets, mobilized across both empires. The first battles erupted along the border sectors, turning entire star systems into graveyards. Concordat diplomats scrambled to contain the conflict, but both sides were beyond listening. The war spread like a cancer through the galactic arm, consuming resources and lives at a staggering rate. Both empires threw everything they had into the fight. The Vex deployed bioweapons that could reshape atmospheres and turn enemy ships into breeding grounds for their soldiers. The Korthax countered with electromagnetic pulses that could shut down biological nervous systems. Across entire planets, neutral species fled the war zones' trade routes. Collapsed. The Concordat could only watch in horror as two of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations tried to annihilate each other. 3 months into the war, a massive engagement took place near the Caldrith Nebula 200. Vex vessels faced off against an equal number of Korthax warships. The battle raged for 6 days. When it was over, both fleets were in ruins. The Vex fleet, commanded by War Mother Zesith, found themselves surrounded and outgunned. Their vessels were damaged, their biocores depleted. Their warriors exhausted. Zesith made a desperate decision: plot an emergency hyperspace jump. She commanded, "Anywhere but here." Her tactical mind protested. "War Mother, we haven't mapped this sector properly. We could emerge inside a star, or we die here, or we take the chance. Plot the jump now." The surviving Vex vessels carved a tear through reality. Plunging into hyperspace through an unmapped corridor, the Korthax fleet, led by Command Node 77, detected the hyperspace signature immediately. They flee like cowards. 77's metallic voice resonated through the command network. "Pursue and destroy, show no mercy." The Korthax vessels followed. Their sensors locked onto the Vex hyperspace wakeboat. Fleets hurtled through dimensions that organic minds couldn't properly comprehend, racing toward an unknown destination. When they emerged, both fleet commanders were momentarily confused. A yellow star burned before them, unremarkable in every way. Several rocky planets orbited in predictable patterns. A gas giant dominated the outer system. There was no strategic value here, no resources worth fighting over, no colonies to capture. The Vex fleet began emergency repairs. Their organic ships already starting to regenerate damaged sections. The Korthax fleet emerged moments later, weapons charged, and Reedy 77 scanned the system briefly, noted the lack of any military installations, and dismissed it from consideration. What mattered was destroying the Vex. All vessels. Attack formation, eliminate the enemy. The battle resumed near the orbit of the large gas giant the locals called Jupiter Plasma. Beams carved through the void. Biological missiles exploded in bursts of acidic compounds. Kinetic projectiles traveling at relativistic speeds punched through hulls. Neither side noticed the primitive radio transmissions coming from the third planet. Neither side cared about the small space stations that began broadcasting frantic signals in all directions to the Vex and Korthax. This system was just another battlefield, an empty stage for their ancient hatred. They were about to learn how wrong they were on Earth. Every government's emergency alert system activated simultaneously. Something impossible was happening in their sky, and humanity was about to have the rudest awakening in their entire history. The first warning came from the James Webb Space Telescope. ARRYDR. Sarah Martinez was monitoring deep space signals when her screen, suddenly filled with readings that made no sense. Objects were appearing near Jupiter, massive objects that hadn't been there seconds before. "This has to be a malfunction," she whispered. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't. Objects were real ships, vessels the size of cities, materializing out of nothing within minutes. Every space agency on Earth was in chaos. The International Space Station transmitted shaky footage of the distant battle. Flashes of light erupted between the massive vessels, each explosion bright enough to be visible from Earth orbit. "Are those nuclear detonations?" someone asked. "Bigger," came the reply. "Much bigger." The UN Security Council convened in emergency session. Presidents and prime ministers were pulled from sleep. Military commanders worldwide went to maximum alert. No one knew what was happening, but everyone understood it was catastrophic. Admiral Sarah Chun of the United Earth Defense Force stood in the command center beneath Geneva, watching the feeds from every telescope and satellite humanity possessed. She had spent 20 years preparing for potential threats from space asteroids, solar flares, even the possibility of hostile contact. Nothing had prepared her for this. "Mom," We're tracking over 400 distinct vessels, her tactical officer reported. They're engaging each other with weapons that register in the petawatt range, some kind of plasma-based energy beams. Kinetic projectiles moving at 0.02 light speed. And something else we can't identify. Have they noticed us? Negative, they haven't responded to any of our transmissions, completely ignoring Earth. Chun watched the battle spread across the outer system. Alien vessels moved in patterns that suggested sophisticated tactical coordination. Two distinct groups. She realized this wasn't an invasion, it was a war. And Earth just happened to be in the middle of it. Then Europa colony went silent. Small research station housed 12,000 people scientists. Support staff, families. Chun watched the telemetry flatline. Eon moment the colony was transmitting normally. The next, nothing. Just a cloud of superheated gas where humanity's first deep space colony had been. Confirm Europa status. She ordered. Her voice steady despite the ice in her veins. Colony destroyed. Ma'am, complete loss of signal thermal. Signatures consistent with total atmospheric. Vaporization. 12,000 people gone in an instant. Collateral damage in someone else's ward. The command center fell. Silent, then alarms blared again. Ma'am. Mars colony reporting impact 1 of the alien. Vessels just crashed into dome. 7. The feeds from Mars showed devastation. Burning wreck the size of a mountain had torn through the colony's main habitation dome. The atmosphere was venting into the thin Martian air. Emergency bulkheads were failing. The death toll was climbing by the second. Chun felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. For decades, humanity had wondered what first contact would be like. They had built protocols, prepared speeches, imagined scenarios. No one had imagined this. Get me every nation's military command. She ordered. Priority Alpha Channel Authorization Chun 07. Within minutes, she was looking at the faces of generals, admirals, and commanders from every major military on Earth. Some she knew personally, others she had only met in simulations and war games. You've all seen the situation, she began. 2. Alien fleets are fighting in our system. They've already killed over 15,000 of our people. And they don't even know we exist if we do nothing. We're just targets waiting to be hit. What can we do? The Russian commander asked. We have nuclear weapons. But those things out there are using weapons that make nukes look like firecrackers. We fight anyway, Chun said. We hit them with everything we have. We make them notice us because right now, the only thing worse than being their enemy is being their collateral damage. You're talking about attacking both sides of an interstellar war, the Chinese admiral pointed out. That's suicide. Maybe, Chun agreed. But I'd rather die fighting than wait for a stray shot to vaporize another colony we're outmatched in technology. But we have advantages. They don't. What advantages? We know this system better than they dour fighting. For our home, and we have nothing to lose. The vote was. Quick unanimous humanity would fight the United Earth. Defense Force had been established 30 years ago when the nations of Earth finally agreed that space threats required a unified response. They had 73 combat-capable vessels, destroyers, built with railguns and missile pods, frigates with experimental plasma cannons, and 12 larger cruisers that represented humanity's best engineering against the alien armada. It was laughable, but Chun wasn't planning a direct engagement. Target the damaged vessels, she ordered. Anything showing signs of system failure or reduced combat capability, hit them with nuclear-tipped missiles, railgun saturation fire, and then get out where mosquitoes. People, we sting and we run. The UEDF fleet deployed from orbital shipyards around Earth and Luna. They moved in small groups, using the asteroid belt for cover, approaching the battle zone from Multiple vectors. The aliens were so focused on each other they never saw humanity coming. The first human strike hit a Vex cruiser that had lost half its biohull to Korthak's Fire 6 missiles, each carrying a 50 megaton warhead. Slammed into the exposed sections, the biological ship convulsed and died. Its neural network severed. The second strike targeted a Korthak's destroyer, trailing debris from its engine section railgun. Round, simple tungsten slugs accelerated to incredible velocity, punched through the weakened armor and detonated the ship's power core. For a moment, both alien fleets seemed to pause. Then they resumed fighting each other, dismissing the attacks as misfires or friendly fire. "They don't even realize we're here," Chun's tactical officer said in disbelief. "Good," Chun replied. "Hit them again." Over the next 6 hours, humanity struck again and again. They used tactics the aliens had never encountered: kamikaze drones loaded with nuclear warheads, electromagnetic pulse weapons that disrupted Korthak's systems, biological agents stolen from Earth's most secure labs that confused Vex Hive communications. It wasn't enough to stop the alien fleets, but it was enough to hurt them. When a Vex War mother finally analyzed the attack patterns and realized they were coming from the third planet, she was shocked. The primitives were fighting back. Commander Zesith accessed the Concordat database and found the survey report. The humans weren't supposed to be capable of space warfare. They barely had fusion power, yet here they were, destroying vessels with weapons that should have been centuries beyond their capability on the Korthak's flagship. Command Node 77 reached the same conclusion. The mechanical intelligence calculated probabilities and found them all disturbing. These humans were using primitive technology with devastating efficiency. They weren't trying to win, they were trying to make the cost of ignoring them too high to bear. Analysis 77 requested from its tactical subroutines. The humans are compensating for technological inferiority with tactical innovation. They strike from unexpected angles, use unconventional weapons, and exploit our focus on each other. Recommendation: acknowledge the threat. For the first time since arriving in the Sol system, both alien fleets turned their sensors toward Earth. What they saw terrified them, not because humanity was strong, but because they were desperate, and desperate enemies were the most dangerous kind. War Mother Zesith studied the data on the human species with growing unease. They were mammals, carbon-based, unremarkable in almost every biological metric. Their technology was laughably primitive by Concordat standards, yet in 3 days of fighting, they had destroyed 7 Vex vessels and damaged twice that number. The humans fought like no species she had encountered. In 400 years of warfare, they didn't rely on superior shields or stronger weapons. They used deception, misdirection, and a disturbing willingness to sacrifice their own vessels if it meant taking an enemy with Thema. Human destroyer had rammed one of her frigates yesterday, detonating its reactor core on impact. Both ships were annihilated, but the human vessel had been crippled anyway. They chose mutual destruction over retreat. These primitives have no regard for their own survival. Her tactical coordinator observed through the hive link. Incorrect, Zesith replied. They regard survival of their species above survival of individuals. They fight as a hive. But without our biological connection, it should be impossible. Yet they achieve it through choice alone. That was what disturbed her most. The Vex fought as one because they were one. The humans fought as one despite being billions of separate minds across the system. Command Node 77 was reaching similar conclusions. The Jigdisty Korthaks had cataloged over 6,000 species in their databases. None of them used such primitive weapons with such sophisticated tactics. Human vessels were slow. Their armor was weak. Their weapons were crude. but they compensated with redundancy. Every system had backups when their shields failed. They rerouted power to weapons when hulls breached. They sealed compartments and continued fighting when primary weapons were destroyed. They used secondary and tertiary systems. They do not build for superiority. 77 transmitted to the Korthax fleet. They build for survival. Each vessel is designed to continue functioning despite catastrophic damage. It was a philosophy that made no sense to the Korthax. We accept that your vessel would be damaged instead of building better shields. Yet the results spoke for themselves. Human ships kept fighting long after they should have been destroyed. Admiral Chun coordinated the defense from her command bunker, surrounded by screens showing feeds from across the solar system. Situation was deteriorating. Luna Base had taken a direct hit from a Vex bioweapon. Entire facility was compromised, overrun by some kind of organic growth that spread through the corridors like cancer. They had lost contact with 3 asteroid mining colonies. Mars colony was barely holding together. The survivors huddled in emergency shelters while engineers worked desperately to restore life support. Earth itself was under threat. Both alien fleets had started targeting human positions. Directly orbital bombardment had scorched Australia's northern territories. A Korthax particle beam had carved a trench across the Pacific Ocean, boiling millions of tons of water. The death toll had passed 1 billion. Chun forced herself to look at the numbers. 1 billion people dead in less than a week. The worst catastrophe in human history. And it was still getting worse. Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from Commander Webb. Her communications officer reported. He's inside a Korthax vessel. Chun pulled up the feed. Commander Marcus Webb looked like hell. His environmental suit was scorched and patched with emergency sealant. But he was grinning. Admiral, you need to see this. The camera panned across what appeared to be a Korthax command center. Alien bodies, or rather, alien machines lay scattered across the floor. Webb's strike team had done the impossible. They aborted and captured an enemy vessel. We've accessed their computer core. Webb reported. The translation matrix is rough, but we're getting data fleet positions, tactical protocols, and something else: intelligence on both fleets' strategic situation. Explain. Chun ordered. Both sides are spread thin. This isn't their main force. These are expeditionary fleets that got separated from their supply lines. They are running low on ammunition. Their ships are damaged, and neither side has reinforcements coming. Chun felt her pulse quicken. Are you certain? Yes, ma'am. They're stuck here just like we are. The difference is, this is our home. We can resupply. We can repair. We can reinforce. They can't. Chun looked at the tactical display with new eyes. The alien fleets had seemed unstoppable. But Webb was right. They were wounded predators, far from their pack, bleeding out in territory they didn't understand. How long until you can extract with that data? Already done. Ma'am, we're transmitting everything now. Webb out. Chun turned to her staff. Get me our best intelligence analysts. I want to know everything about these fleets, their weaknesses, their communications, their tactical patterns, and get me our cyber warfare division. Ma'am? If Commander Webb can hack their computers, so can we. It's time we stopped fighting fair. Over the next 48 hours, humanity's approach to the war changed completely. They stopped trying to destroy the alien fleets through direct combat. Instead, they became saboteurs and manipulators, human hackers, working with captured Korthax computer systems, began infiltrating enemy communications. They sent false sensor data, making the Vex think Korthax reinforcements were arriving. They altered Korthax targeting systems, causing their weapons to miss by critical margins. They seeded both fleets' databases with misinformation. Meanwhile, human vessels used their knowledge of the Sol system to maximum advantage. They lured Vex ships into the radiation belts around Jupiter, where the intense electromagnetic fields disrupted their biological neural networks. They drew Korthax vessels into the asteroid belt, where human miners have been placing explosives for weak simple chemical explosives, the kind used for breaking apart rocks, suddenly became devastating weapons when entire asteroids were detonated in the path of enemy ships. The aliens were fighting a war on two fronts against each other, and against an enemy that refused to fight conventionally. Chen watched the tactical display as a Vex battlecruiser pursued what appeared to be a fleeing human destroyer. The destroyer led the alien ship directly into a debris field that had been thoroughly mined. When the Vex vessel entered the kill zone, 300 separate explosions tore it apart. "That's the third one this hour," her tactical officer reported with grim satisfaction. "The aliens are learning to be cautious around our vessels." "Good," Chun replied. "Caution slows them down, and every hour they spend being careful is another hour we can prepare on Earth." Every factory had converted to war production. Civilian spacecraft were being retrofitted with weapons. Mining equipment was being turned into mass drivers. Chemical plants were producing explosives at unprecedented rates. Humanity had been building infrastructure in space for decades, preparing for peaceful expansion. Now all of that infrastructure became weapons. Ore haulers became missile platforms. Satellite networks became sensor grids. Communication relays became command and control nodes. The Vex and Korthax had superior technology, but humanity had superior numbers of platforms. Every satellite could be a weapon. Every station could be a fortress. Every colony could be a stronghold. But Mother Zesith finally understood what she was facing. The humans weren't fighting to win, they were fighting to survive, and a species fighting for survival would use every advantage, exploit every weakness, and refuse to surrender no matter the cost. She had seen it before in species that fought to their last individual rather than accept defeat, but never had she seen it in a species this young, this primitive, this far from the stars. Command Node 77 reached a similar conclusion. The logical choice was to withdraw, to leave this system and rejoin the main Korthax fleet. But logic warred with pride. How could the Korthax hegemony, masters of technology and war, retreat from primitives who still used chemical rockets? Yet the calculations were undeniable. Remaining in this system meant continued losses against an enemy that grew more dangerous by the day. Both fleet commanders faced the same dilemma. Neither wanted to be the first to retreat, but staying meant bleeding out in a war they couldn't win against an enemy they had never expected to fight. In command centers across Earth, Admiral Chun and her staff prepared for the next phase. They had survived the initial onslaught. They had learned to fight. Now it was time to make the aliens regret ever coming to Seoul. Admiral Chun stood before the holographic display showing the Sol system, studying the positions of every vessel like a chess grandmaster analyzing the board. 2 weeks into the war, the situation had evolved into a deadly stalemate. The Vex controlled the outer system beyond Mars. The Korthax had claimed the inner asteroid belt Earth, and its remaining colonies existed in the disputed zone between them. Both alien fleets were shadows of their former strength. Damaged vessels limped through space, their repair systems struggling to keep up with accumulating damage. But they were still powerful enough to destroy humanity if they focused their attention. That was why Chun had no intention of letting them focus. Status report. She ordered her intelligence officer, Colonel Park, highlighted several points on the display. "We've successfully infiltrated both fleets. Communication networks, the Vex, use a biological neural link that we can't hack directly, but we can introduce false sensor data that their ships interpret as genuine. The Korthax network is more challenging. Their encryption is sophisticated, but Commander Webb's team has been uploading malware into every system they can access." "And the deception operation?" Park smiled grimly. "Running perfectly. we've been broadcasting fake hyperspace signatures that match Vex fleet patterns. The Korthax think War Mother Zesith called for reinforcements simultaneously. We're feeding the Vex false data, suggesting the Korthax are about to receive a supply convoy. Chun nodded. Both sides think the other is getting stronger. Yes, ma'am, it's making them aggressive though, thigh-kicking risks. Trying to achieve decisive victories before the phantom reinforcements arrive. Good aggressive enemies make mistakes. What's the status of Operation Gauntlet? All elements are in position. We've seeded the Jupiter-Mars corridor with proximity mines, debris fields with hidden explosives, and what Admiral Zhao is calling unpleasant surprises. Chun allowed herself a thin smile. Admiral Zhao commanded the Pacific Fleet and had a gift for creative warfare. His unpleasant surprises usually lived up to the name. Execute the operation. Let's herd these predators into our kill zone. The plan was audacious. Humanity would manipulate both alien fleets into fighting each other in a carefully prepared battlefield where human forces could exploit every weakness. It began with a series of coordinated strikes. Human vessels attacked Vex positions near Mars, then retreated toward Jupiter. The Vex pursued, angry and eager to crush the primitive resistance simultaneously. Different human units struck Korthax positions and retreated along the same corridors. The Korthax followed their tactical algorithms, calculating that the humans were fleeing to a fallback position. Both alien fleets were being drawn into the same region of space, a carefully selected area where the asteroid belt thinned and the gravitational influences of Jupiter and Mars created unpredictable orbital dynamics. War Mother Zesith sensed the trap too. Later fleet emerged from the asteroid field to find themselves facing the Korthax. Both sides had been maneuvered into a direct confrontation. They humans, she realized. Through the hive mind, they orchestrated this. Command Node 77 reached the same conclusion. Microseconds later, the primitives had manipulated two advanced civilizations like pieces on a game board. It should have been impossible, yet here they were, exactly where the humans wanted them. Both fleet commanders made the same destroy the other fleet first, deal with the humans later. The battle that erupted was the largest engagement yet. Vex bioships launched swarms of organic missile as Korthax vessels responded with particle beams and antimatter warhead. Space itself seemed to scream as reality warping weapons tore at the fabric of the cosmos and hidden in the chaos. Human forces struck with surgical precision. They didn't engage the main fleets. Instead, they targeted damaged vessels trying to retreat. They destroyed supply ships carrying ammunition and repair materials. They planted mines in the debris fields, turning every piece of wreckage into a potential weapon. Admiral Chun watched from Earth, directing the battle like a conductor, leading an orchestra. Alpha Wing hit that Vex carrier. Its shields are down in the aft section. Bravo Group, the Korthax dreadnought is venting atmosphere. Put 3 torpedoes into that breach. Charlie Squadron, fall back. You've done enough. Don't get caught in the crossfire. Her officers worked frantically, coordinating hundreds of vessels across millions of kilometers. Every human ship was outmatched individually, but together, operating with perfect coordination, they became a force multiplier that turned the alien battle into a slaughter on Mars. The survivors watched the distant battle through whatever sensors still functioned. Dr. James Chun, no relation to the Fondaine under the Jin to the Admiral, had been a xenobiologist before the Warno. He was helping coordinate resistance efforts from the ruins of Dome 7. There, tearing each other apart, his assistant breathed. The aliens never stood a chance once they started fighting each other in our territory. Don't celebrate yet, James warned. We've lost Mars Colony too. Europa's gone. Luna Base is compromised even if we win. The cost has been catastrophic. His assistant, a young engineer named Maria, nodded soberly. How many dead? Last count was 1.3 billion, and that's just confirmed casualties. The real number is probably higher. They stood in silence, watching the battle rage. Every flash of light represented destruction. On a scale that would have seemed impossible a month ago, vessels larger than cities being vaporized, weapons that could crack planets being fired in desperation, and in the middle of it all, tiny human ships darting between the giants, stinging and retreating, slowly bleeding both sides to death back on Earth. The cost was becoming unbearable, Admiral. Chun received reports every hour. Entire cities evacuated as orbital debris rained down refugee camps, overwhelmed with displaced populations. Hospital systems collapsed under the weight of casualties from bombardment. The Amazon rainforest was burning from a Vex bioweapon that had missed its intended target. The Mediterranean had been partially boiled by a Corthax energy beam. Antarctica was melting from the heat of crashed starship reactors. The planet that humanity had spent millennia building civilization upon was being torn apart as collateral damage in someone else's war. Chun felt the weight of every death she had ordered humanity to fight. And this was the price. Admiral, a chief of staff said quietly, "You need to sleep. You've been on duty for 36 hours. I'll sleep when they're gone." Chun replied, "How's the civilian evacuation proceeding?" All major population centers have been moved underground. We're using old subway systems, mine shafts, anything that can provide shelter from orbital strikes. It's not comfortable, but it's survivable. Chun nodded. Survivable was the best they could hope for on the tactical display. The battle was reaching its crescendo. Both alien fleets were exhausted. The Vex had lost over 60% of their vessels. The Corthax were down to 43 operational ships. They were still dangerous, still capable of destroying Earth if they chose. But they were also desperate. War Mother Zesith made a decision that went against every instinct. Disengage. She commanded through the Hive link. All vessels, retreat to Rally Point Gamma. The Vex fleet began withdrawing, their ships trailing debris and biological fluids. Command Node 77 calculated the odds and reached the same conclusion. All units execute tactical withdrawal reform at designated coordinates. The Corthax vessels pulled back, their formation ragged and broken for the first time since arriving in Sol System. Both alien fleets were retreating. Chun watched them go, barely allowing herself to believe it. "Do we pursue?" her tactical officer asked. "Negative," Chun replied. "Let them go. I've hurt them enough." "Ma'am, this might be our only chance to finish them." Chun turned to face her staff. "Look at the casualty reports. Look at the damage to Earth. We're not trying to win a war. We're trying to survive one if they want to leave. We let them leave." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't over. The aliens were withdrawing to regroup. Not to leave. They would return, possibly with reinforcements, unless humanity found a way to make them understand that Sol System was no longer easy prey. Unless they found a way to make the entire galaxy understand that humanity was done being ignored. "Get me the engineering teams," Chun ordered. "I want a full analysis of every piece of alien technology we've captured, and get me our best. Physicists, we need to understand their hyperspace. Communicators." Her chief of staff looked confused. "Ma'am? If they can call for help, so can we," Chun explained. "It's time the Concordat knew what happened here. Time the galaxy knew that humanity exists, that we fought, and that we survived. You're going to contact the alien government?" "I'm going to contact everyone," Chun said. "And I'm going to make sure they never dismiss us as primitives again." The captured Corthax vessel hung in Earth orbit like a trophy, surrounded by human ships and engineering platforms for 3 weeks. Teams of scientists and engineers had been dissecting its systems, learning how technology centuries ahead of humanity actually worked. Dr. Sarah Martinez led the hyperspace communications team, working in shifts around the clock to understand the alien FDL transmitter. It's elegant, she explained to Admiral Chun during one of the Admiral's rare visits to the captured ship. They're not actually sending information faster than light. They're sending it through a different layer of space-time, where distance works differently. Can we replicate it? Chun asked. Sarah gestured to the makeshift human equipment cobbled together around the alien core. We already have. It's not pretty, and it'll probably burn out after one use. But it'll work. We can transmit on concordat frequencies. Chun looked at the jury-rigged system, marveling at what humanity had accomplished in less than a month. They had reverse-engineered technology that should have taken decades to understand. Desperation and genius made for powerful motivators. How long until it's ready? 6 hours. But Admiral, are you sure about this? Broadcasting our location to the entire galaxy seems risky. They already know we're here. Chun replied. The survey reports, remember? We've been cataloged and dismissed. Time to update their files across the system. Both alien fleets had regrouped. They weren't fighting each other anymore. They had bigger problems. Their vessels were damaged beyond their ability to repair. Without shipyard facilities, their supplies were exhausted. Their crews, biological and mechanical, were at their limits. War Mother Zesith convened with Command Node 77 via encrypted channel. It was the first time the two enemies had communicated directly in over a century. We must leave this system. Zesith transmitted. Agreed. 77 responded. However, the humans will not allow free passage. The humans are primitives. We can destroy their forces if we coordinate. Calculation suggests otherwise. The humans have learned our tactics. They know this system better than we don't. Assault would cost us both fleets. Zesith felt frustration ripple through the hive mind. Then what do you propose? Truce. We combine our remaining resources to effect repairs sufficient for hyperspace transit. We leave this system and never return. You would cooperate with the Vex? You would refuse cooperation with the Korthax, even if it means escape. Zesith considered. The war between their species had raged for decades, but this was about survival now. Agreed. But know this. Korthax, when we meet again beyond this system, the war continues. Acknowledge transmitting repair protocols now on Earth. Admiral Chun received reports of the alien cooperation with grim satisfaction. They're scared. Colonel Park observed. Good fear means respect. How are the preparations? The broadcast equipment is ready. We've compiled footage from across the war, satellite imagery, combat recordings, casualty reports. The message is prepared pending your approval. Chun reviewed the transmission one last time. It was blunt, harsh, and completely necessary. Send it, she ordered. Broadcast on all concordat frequencies. Make sure every species in the galaxy hears this. The hyperspace transmitter powered up, drawing energy from 3 nuclear reactors. Alien core hummed with power as human-built amplifiers boosted the signal beyond anything its designers had intended. And then, across hundreds of light-years of space, the message transmitted. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the United Earth Defense Force. Speaking on behalf of humanity, you cataloged us. You surveyed our world and dismissed us as primitives not worth contact for another 1,000 years. You were wrong. 3 weeks ago, 2 of your empires brought their war to our home. The Vex, Dominion, and the Korthax hegemony arrived in Sol System and began fighting without regard for the lives they destroyed. They killed over 1.5 billion of our people. They destroyed our colonies on Mars, Europa, and Luna. They bombarded our homeworld and treated us as insignificant obstacles in their ancient hatred. We gave them a choice: leave peacefully or face resistance. They chose to ignore us, so we made them pay attention with weapons you consider primitive. We destroyed over 100 of their vessels with tactics you never taught us. We turned their war against them with determination you underestimated. We fought 2 galactic powers to a standstill. This message is your only warning. Sol system is now sovereign. Human territory. Reclaim our star, our planets, our moons, and the space between them. The next fleet that enters our system without permission will not be given the chance to leave. We are done being cataloged and dismissed. We are done waiting for you to deem us worthy of contact. We are done being the collateral damage of galactic civilization. Humanity has arrived on the galactic stage. We came in fire and blood because you gave us no choice, but we are here now, and we are not leaving to the Concordat. Update your files. We are not primitives. We are survivors. We are warriors. We are humanity, and we will be heard. The transmission included footage that made even hardened military commanders across the galaxy pause. Images of human soldiers fighting inside alien vessels using chemical firearms and explosives. Recordings of human ships ramming alien cruisers in kamikaze attacks. Data showing how humanity have manipulated 2 superior forces into destroying each other, and most damning of all, footage of the casualty cities burning from orbital bombardment colonies, vaporized by stray weapons graveyards that stretched for kilometers. Holding the 1.5 billion dead, the message concluded with a simple statement: this is what happens when you bring war to humanity's home. Remember it. Across the galaxy, the Concordat received the transmission. With shock, elder species who had guided galactic civilization for millennia suddenly found themselves confronted with a species they had ignored. The footage showed technology that was primitive by Concordat standards: chemical rockets, nuclear weapons, kinetic projectiles. Nothing special, but the tactics, the coordination, the sheer ruthless efficiency with which humanity had wielded those primitive weapons. That was something new, something dangerous. Emergency sessions convened across Concordat space. Some species called for immediate intervention, suggesting humanity be contained before they became a threat. Others argued for diplomatic contact, recognizing that any species capable of fighting off 2 major powers deserved respect. A few elder counselors reviewed the data and came to a disturbing conclusion. They learned in real time. One ancient being observed. They had no experience with space warfare, yet within days they were exploiting weaknesses in combat doctrines that took millennia to develop. They adapted, another agreed. Every engagement taught them something new. Every loss made them more effective. They fought like prey animals, a third counselor noted. Cornered, desperate, using every advantage, no matter how small, but they coordinated like apex predators. This combination should not exist. The debate raged. But one thing was clear. Humanity could no longer be dismissed in Sol System. The 2 alien fleets completed their repairs, where Mother Zesith opened a channel to Earth. Our first communication with the humans. We are departing your system. The Vex acknowledge your strength and will not return. Command Node 77 transmitted a similar message. The Corthax recognize human sovereignty over Sol System. This war was an error. It will not be repeated. Admiral Chun stood in her command center, watching the alien vessels begin their hyperspace transitions. Do you believe them? Colonel Park asked. It doesn't matter, Chun replied. Let them tell the galaxy what happened here. Let every species know that humanity fights back. The alien fleets vanished. Leaving Sol System for the first time in weeks, Earth was quiet again. But it was a different quiet than before. The sky was full of debris. The Surface was scarred and humanity was irrevocably changed 6 months later. The first human-built faster-than-light vessel completed its test flight. The ship was crude compared to Concordat standards. Built from reverse-engineered alien technology and human ingenuity, but it worked. Commander Marcus Webb stood on the bridge, looking at the stars with new eyes, course plotted to Alpha Centauri. His navigator reported, "We'll be the first humans to leave Sol system under our own power." Webb nodded. 6 months ago, they had been defending their home from extinction. Now they were ready to explore, but not as supplicants asking permission from the galactic community, as equals, as survivors who had earned their place through blood and fire. Admiral Chun watched the departure from Earth, now serving as the head of the new United Earth Space Command. Defense Force had become an exploration and colonization fleet. Humanity was going to the stars on their own terms in shipyards around Earth and Mars. New vessels were being constructed, human designs incorporating alien technology they had captured, and reverse-engineered weapons that could defend against anything they might encounter. Shields that had been tested in actual combat engines that could cross the galaxy. The primitives had graduated, and as Chun looked up at the stars, she knew one thing with certainty: the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had arrived not with a peaceful handshake, but with a declaration of war against anyone who threatened them. They had shown the advanced civilizations of the Concordat what happened when you dismissed a species as primitive, when you brought war to their home, when you underestimated what they would do to survive. The elder species had surveyed Earth and seen primitives. They had been right about the technology, but they had been catastrophically wrong about the people.